Welcome back to Reviews with Elaine, because I have opinions. And today's opinions will be about The Vile Village by Lemony Snicket. Okay, so this is a book that's almost too real for the current moment, which is a bit sad considering how utterly ridiculous it is. But because of that, I will admit, I feel like my thoughts are a little bit less cohesive than usual. Just expect a little bit of rambling in this review. But this is book the 7th of a series of unfortunate events. And as usual with later books in the series, if you are watching this video without having read the first previous books in the series, yeah, there will be spoilers for those books. I try to avoid spoilers for the book I'm actively reviewing, but when reviewing series, the previous ones, I often do have to talk about what happened in them to make this make sense. And I don't try hard at all to avoid spoilers for those books. I also want to admit that this review, I will address the vibes of the ending of this book a good bit, but I will not give you any clue of what actually physically happens. And objectively, the whole gamut of a series of unfortunate events is the author tells you before you even get started what the vibes of the ending are going to be like. So I don't feel bad about it. But this book starts with the Baudelaire orphans being given an option of which village they want to be adopted by. Based on the aphorism, "It takes a village to raise a child," a new program is started that allows entire communities to adopt orphans. They choose a village listed as VFD for one reason. Their friends, the Quagmires, had told them that there was a secret around those particular initials, and so the Baudelaires hope to find answers in this village. What they actually find is a village with ridiculous draconian rules, endless chores, a million crows, and very little empathy shown to children they've agreed to raise. The only light here really is Hector, a nice handyman who they will be living with, and mysterious notes that show the Quagmires might be nearby, if the Baudelaires can only figure out where, before Count Olaf finds them. Okay, so yeah, this book is largely about society as a whole not caring about the most powerless in their midst, using them for free labor, refusing to listen to them, and using an unfair system that is practically impossible to navigate to imprison and torment them. It's also about good people who are too scared to speak out. And hell, this one is barely even really about Count Olaf. Like, yeah, he shows up. He steers the system to crash into the innocent children. But this one is far more about the failures of society and the system than it is about an evil man with evil minions. And like all of a series of unfortunate events, it's over the top. It's ridiculous. It's a bit silly, but it's also drawing the reader's attention to the reality behind these exaggerations. And it needs to be extreme, both to get its point across, to make at least it slightly comedic so that it's a little bit more tolerable, but also because this is the breaking point in the series. This is when things go from one formula to the next in the plotting. And so the Baudelaires have to have lost all faith in the system and the adults around them to be willing to walk away from them. And Lord, does that make this book feel dismal in so many ways. And like even the physical description of the town is such a perfect emotive description. Like we don't get a huge amount of description of exactly what the town looks like, except for the constant movement of the crows. But we get the landscape feels so empty and dry, and that's perfect for what the physicalization of the town is doing within the narrative. Like it feels so isolated and so helpless. Like we are left with the feeling that these kids are little dots in a vast, hostile landscape, and that does a spectacular job of making us feel that they are even more helpless. And that's actually where the hope comes in this book, because as helpless as the book makes us, the reader, feel like the kids are, they aren't. This book is about them standing up and taking care of themselves. Them saying, if the world that won't provide us with a worthy guardian, we will be our own guardian. There's an entire segment of this book that's about Deus Ex Machinas, and it's set up in such a way that the reader very much does expect a Deus Ex Machina to come save them. Even as the narrator is telling us it won't, we sort of expect it to be there. And it starts to look like it will, but it falls through. And there's this utterly fucking heart-wrenching moment when the kids have to let go of their idea that someone is coming to save them. And it's crushing. But then, minor spoilers for a detail, but not really, Sunny stands up. She takes her first step on her own, and it's ham-fisted, it's subtle as a brick wall to the face, but it's still this perfect metaphor for the kids taking their big first step into the state of adulthood. Not literally, of course. The kids are still like 14, 13, and I think 2, maybe 3. But the state of adulthood being the state of having to take care of yourself and, you know, being an independent person. And this book starts with them picking where they are moving to for the first time. Like, this is their first chance to have that choice, but they are still within the system, and it ends with them throwing that system off entirely to become somewhat entirely independent. And furthering this, I know that the next book is one where they end up getting jobs and people interpreting them as adults, even though they physically look nothing like adults. And by the way, this is also furthers my belief that The Miserable Mill, I think it's like book 3 or 4, is just in the wrong place in the series. Like, that book should be the one preceding this one, not where it is. But that's entirely beside the point. But the point is, this is a transitional book. And the thing about transitional books and transitions in books is they tend to come out of really low moments. And yeah, the book is an emotional low in many ways. The kids themselves aren't that sad, and in many ways that's almost worse. Like, the casual way they barely seem to notice how bad things are for them is in itself heart-wrenching. The narration is constantly pointing out the abuses that they are suffering, and the kids are just going along with it, being like, okay, yeah. And where they start to get upset and we start to see them having real emotions and being really scared is when it involves other people, and that leads us directly into the transition moment for them when they hit their lowest emotional moment in the entire series, and it's a punch to the gut. And then they start climbing out of it. And how low it gets is what allows them pulling themselves up to feel so much more powerful. And I want to talk about a couple specific things in this review. Mainly death and light. So yeah, first death. Death in kids' books is almost always handled with, for lack of a better word, kid gloves. Like, I've read plenty of kids' books that straight up refuse to use the word death, and instead will say things like, we almost lost you, or she went away, or they never saw him again. And the reader is left to infer that maybe that character died, maybe they just aren't here anymore. We don't know. We're not gonna say die. And, like, you'll see people in life-threatening situations, but never is it mentioned they could have died. Sometimes characters will even die in those books, and instead it's just like, yep. And now he's gone. And you're like, okay, is he dead? It was really unclear. But a series of unfortunate events has never done that. The orphans are orphans because their parents are dead. It's explicitly stated every single book, multiple times, and every single one of the books has at least one moment when the reader is directly confronted with the kid's loss and their mourning. Usually it's a memory they have of their parents and how it compares to their life now, and it's always a very emotional kind of moment. This series includes the metaphor that I think has stuck with me the longest for what mourning really feels like, and like ever since I read these books the first time, like 2 decades ago, I have been thinking about this metaphor every time I think about mourning. And it's the metaphor of walking up a flight of stairs and missing one, and that sense of falling, and that lack, and that is such a clear image to me, and I love it. And the series is really straightforward with death and mourning. And like several of the kids' guardians throughout the early part of the series die. Some of them almost on page death. And it's never like we spend much time with the body or we experience much of the pain of death. Like, we're not getting gruesome details here. But there's just something about the way that death hits in this particular book in the series that is even more real and so abrupt and so painful. And it really makes the threat to the kids' lives feel so much more real. And like, I don't know, this one just feels more of like an adult confrontation with mortality than some of the earlier ones, which is sort of ironic considering one of the first 6 books features a school with the motto, Memento Mori, which means, remember you too can die. But this book is the one that feels like it's directly confronting the kids with, remember, you too can die. And I really like how this book moves forward with that theme of death and how adult it feels, and the fact that it's not willing to shy away from that without ever feeling like it goes beyond what kids, the actual age range that it's targeted at, can handle. Like, I don't feel like this is too adult for them, but it treats them like people. It says, you have the ability to understand this, and it's gonna hurt, but it's going to be helpful. And I think that's one of the reasons these books are so important for kids. Because, like, I've discussed in other reviews how these books are great explorations of how adults can fail children. But they're also great explorations of what death is like for kids. Like, that feeling of loss and what it's going to impact their lives. And I think it does such a good job of all that. But of course, that means it's heavy. They're not light, cheerful books, but they were never meant to be. But that does lead me into talking about the light in the books. So one of my continuing themes in talking about this entire series, a thing that comes up every single time I discuss any of these books, is the balance of darkness and light. Like, some of these books honestly do tip a little bit too dark for me personally, mainly because when I pick up a middle grade book, I'm looking for something light and playful. The reason I pick up middle grade books is because I'm going, I can't handle adult feels right now. I would like to have some childlike feels, please. But, some of them are very light and playful, and all of them do have enough light that I feel like it's a good balance. There's always humor in them. There's always moments of joy. There's always enough silliness that it feels playful. And this one, I think because it is so dark, the way the moments of light are handled feels really different. And each one feels really, really different. And like, there are small moments of light that I'm not going to address, but there are 3 main ones. The first one is the moment the kids watch the crow's flight for the first time, and it's beautiful. It's glorious. It feels weightless. It feels like pure hope poured onto the page. And it's only like a page of text, but it's such a perfect page of text. And it's just what this book needed. And it's just enough to get you into the book without feeling like, oh, this might be too dark for me. Like, it's enough to pull us forward and to show us that there is hope in this world, even if it seems really dark at this moment. Now, the majority of the rest of the moments of light in this one are deeply shadowed in a really interesting way. Like, one of the other moments of light is when they are presented with the possible better future. And it's all full of kindness and welcome, and you can tell that the person presenting it to them really cares and really wants them to have a good future. But it's also full of the knowledge that even this image of a future full of freedom is a bit of a trap. And it might still be the best they can hope for. And there's a lot of light in it and a lot of kindness in it, but if anything, that light is sort of used as a spotlight to show us where the shadows are. It highlights the edges of the darkness. And the other big moment of light is one that appears in every single one of these books. Every single one of a series of unfortunate events has a moment when the kids know what's going on, they have a plan, and it starts to look like the plan is going to work before everything falls apart. And this one is an odd one here because, as always, the book makes it abundantly clear from page 1, things are not going to work out. The narrator still breaks in like 4 or 5 times as we're getting closer to the climax to warn us things are about to go downhill. It's not gonna work. Don't get your hopes up. The plan is gonna fail. But still, as a reader, you almost can't help but get your hopes up. Like, you're reading the words, this is going to fail, but you're like, but no, it's gonna work. And like, hell, I've read this book before. I've read the entire series 2 decades ago, and I still found myself going, oh yay, they've got everyone, they've got information, they've got an exit strategy, it's gonna be okay. Even while I'm remembering how the book ends. And it's the oddest feeling of both your hope rising and being pulled back down at the exact same time. And it's really interesting to me just comparing these 3 moments of light and seeing the way they work and seeing the contrast of how they work. And by the way, the 4th moment of light is in the conclusion when Sunny stands up, and that moment is surprisingly powerful considering what it is, but it does make me cry. The times I've read it, I have cried. But yeah, this is a heavy little book. I actually picked this one up with the specific thought of get through the Vile Village and you'll get back to the parts of the series you love more, because I do love the latter half of this series significantly more than I love the first half. And it is such a beautiful little book. It made I made a short reading the passage talking about not entertaining notions because it's one of my favorite passages in this book, but it's such a beautiful little segment about how ideas can be glorious or dangerous in a very real, physical way. This book has so much heart and soul. It talks about book banning in a sort of tangential way. That's not the main focus, but it's there. And it's one where Sunny starts to really rise up as more of an important character, and I love that, because by the end of the series, Sunny was my favorite of the characters. And she's always a character. Like, it's not like she does not have character in the beginning, but every book, she has her own things that she does, her own strengths, but she's sort of one note for all of that. Like, the first 6 books, she's the baby who bites things. That's it. She occasionally has funny lines in her, one-word nonsense language, but here she starts to almost become as much of a leader as her siblings, which is beautiful considering this is the first book where the adults around her start to really acknowledge her more as a person. And yeah, there is a previous book in the series where she literally works as a secretary, but she's still not really acknowledged as a person as much as she is here. And being a series of unfortunate events, of course, her being acknowledged as a person is sort of a bad thing in this one, but it's got this beautiful thematic resonance to it, and I love that. I also absolutely love the fact that this is the first book where we see the siblings really fighting at all. And I think it's got such this beautiful humanization to it. And that makes the moment that it's in, which is a very dark moment, hit so hard. And it shows how low they've gotten, and it's just really well done. But this one across the board really does start to feel more adult to me. Even the humor becomes less laugh-out-loud silliness and more the, kind of humor that you sort of expect in adult humorous books. But yeah, this is an important book in the series, and I think at this moment a very important book in general. It's beautifully done, but I'm still glad it's in the rearview mirror for me now. Like, on reread, I'm learning that while I do love a series of unfortunate events, I love these books, it's not the kind of book series that I want to linger in. I'm not sad I'm rereading them at all, but I might not reread them again after this at this point. Or at least not for another couple of decades. There are books that I will pick up and I will read, every, 3 months or so just because I want to re-inhabit their story. And this one is just not that series for me. It's the kind of series that I read and it sits in my heart and I don't need to read it again. But it's been so long that I am sort of discovering them anew, and so it does feel interesting to me. But it's still a book that, if you can handle how much it mirrors our current moment in history, I think it will be a wonderfully cathartic read for a lot of people right now. And even if it is a little too little and a little too late, I appreciate the fact that this book does feature a good person helping in the end. Because that's something I do love about the latter half of this series. As the kids learn more about VFD and find more adults that, actually had connections to their lives, they do find more adults who care, who have empathy, but more than that, are actually willing to fight for the good of those they care about. And that's something I do feel is a little bit lacking in the first half of the series. I feel like because the point this series is trying to make is that adults fail children, it's just a lot of them feeling isolated, and I don't really like that feeling of isolation. And even just with the introduction of the Quagmires and moving forward, it feels more like the kids have other people in their corner. And that makes the entire series feel lighter to me, even while the kids go through hell and back. So yeah, I'm really happy I read this one at this moment. but I'm really happy that it's now past tense and I can move on to the latter half of the series. Though it will be a while before I get to them, because I want to read something else.